Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here today to switch it up a little bit. I'm not going to be going over a character as much or a story. I want to go over what the Day of Judgment is. And I have some notes here, but these are different notes. This is going to be more of an interpretation, if anything. I'm going to try to, align with Christianity here and what Christ had to say. I have 10 quotes from Christ that I want to go over, offer an interpretation, and just try to make sense of. I want to really elaborate on what the Day of Judgment is and what it means. And I start off with 2 questions in my notes. And that's 1, what is the Day of Judgment? And 2, what did Jesus have to say about it? And we're going to be giving the verses when he says these things, and we're going to try to give a little bit of context as to what he's doing when he's saying these things. So let's get right into it. The first Jesus quote: "The Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son." Verse John 5:22. Context: speaking to Jewish leaders after healing on the Sabbath, asserting his divine authority. So he's healing people on the day of rest, the day that the leaders have decided no labor should be done. And healing is seen as a type of labor, divine work. And he says the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son. I think when he says the Father judges no one, he's revealing the utility and necessity of man in flesh, Jesus. It makes me think of the quote that all knees will bow to Jesus. And then he says he has entrusted all judgment to the Son. And he's claiming to be the Son, or he has been claiming to be the Son. And he's showing that his authority of healing others is not limited by days of the week or the rule of that time. So he's making an audacious statement at this time by continuing to heal and look after the sick and show mercy to those broken people, no matter when or where it takes place. 2, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word. Verse Matthew 12:36. Context: responding to Pharisees who accused him of casting out demons by Satan, emphasizing that words and intentions matter. People will give account for every careless word. So when the Pharisees are accusing Jesus of working for Satan, of casting out demons in the name of Beelzebub or Satan, and Jesus is saying every loose word counts. Anytime that you did something that was politically influenced to destroy someone else's reputation or to make yourself look better while simultaneously tearing someone else down, this will not be forgotten by God. So the intention behind what the Pharisees are claiming is what will take the most importance on the day of judgment. The Pharisees using slander or attempting to tear Jesus down simply because it threatens their position is wrong, insincere, and manipulative. And Jesus also accused the Pharisees of leading others astray. So this is another example of doing exactly that. Number 3, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. Verse Matthew 7:21. Context: Sermon on the Mount, warning against empty profession or false discipleship. So this was a part of the Sermon on the Mount when he says this. This is one of the scariest things that Jesus has ever said. Jesus has talked extensively about hell and the anguish and torture that awaits those that have separated themselves from God. But here he's saying, even if you think that you are a follower of me, no rock will be left unturned. If on the outside you look like a follower of Christ, if on the outside you follow the 10 Commandments obediently, if on the outside you are a devoted follower of Christ, but on the inside, if you're doing this for reputation, if you're doing this to get a raise, if you're doing this to get a position of power, they're going to pick up the rock and turn it over, and it's going to reveal that. It's going to see if you were a genuine follower of God and Christ, if you were a true disciple, if your life really changed through Christ and you aligned yourself with what he wants of you through humility and through attempting to genuinely understand. Not just understand the parts that you like, not cherry pick things Jesus said because you like this thing he said more than this. This aligns more with you. It makes more sense. Jesus did not come as a suggestion. He came as a command. He doesn't give you any other option than that. And there's an extension on this quote too that's that kind of plays someone talking to Jesus on the day of judgment, where they're saying, did I not cast out demons in your name? It's coming from the idea that you can work your way into Jesus' acceptance and God's acceptance. And Jesus makes it a regular point that you are already guilty. It is not a matter of how long you can keep your head up. And it's always good to feed the hungry, and it's always good to clothe the naked. But if the ultimate reason that you are doing it is to get 1 million views on YouTube or to gain power and influence in a certain sphere, once again, the rock will be turned over. Your heart, where your intentions lie, why you're genuinely doing these things. At the end of the day, are you doing it because it benefits you, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? And I think that's the threshold that Jesus embodies. That's the ultimate question he's going to be asking you. Do you pray for me or for your reputation? Do you use my teachings to follow me, or do you use my teachings for yourself? And on the day of judgment, you will be confronted with that. Number 4, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Verse, Matthew 25:31-32. Context, teaching on the Mount of Olives about final judgment and responsibility towards others. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, so I imagine what he's saying here is, once he ascends to heaven and holds that position with God, he will separate people one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. I imagine this is an analogy that everyone at this time could understand fairly well. It's very clearly, this is a goat, this is a sheep. The sheep go over here, the goats go over here. And it sounds very direct and a revelation of ultimate judgment, one or the other. It is not, well, you were this good at this time and you were this bad at this time. I guess you can go into this cage for a little bit, but eventually you'll be... No, I don't think it's any of that. It's, we will separate the sheep from the goats. This is the final decision. This is the day of judgment. Number 5. As it was in the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking until the flood came, and they were unaware until it came upon them. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. Matthew 24:37-39. Speaking privately to his disciples about signs of his return, emphasizing readiness. If we remember from the story of Noah, the flood acted as a day of judgment. The flood was a decision of God from the amount of wickedness and chaos that life had come to at that point in humanity, since eating from the tree of knowledge and since beginning to sin and fully separate ourselves from God. And then Jesus says they were eating and drinking until the flood came. So it was abrupt. They had no idea what was going to happen. They were just acting like it was any old regular day, and then all of a sudden, everything changed. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. So this seems to be highlighting no one knows the day or hour that Jesus will return. It will seem like a regular day, just as it did back in Noah's time. And this acts as a reminder of Jesus coming back a second time, which will act as a day of judgment, or a type of day of judgment. 6. All who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. John 5:28-29, explaining his authority and the final resurrection to Jewish leaders. I believe Jesus says this in the same discussion about him healing on the Sabbath day. And once again, it's him establishing his divine authority. All who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. So everyone that dies will hear his voice and come out. God. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. This seems to be the sheeps and the goats once again. Once you die, a day of judgment will hit you. Your intentions, your heart posture, your deeds, and careless words will be held to an ultimate standard of if you were aligning with God's intention and kingdom, or if you were separating or were separated from God's alignment and kingdom. Number 7, many will seek to enter and will not be able. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Luke 13:24-28. Teaching about narrow entrance to salvation, warning that mere proximity to religion doesn't save. This is very similar to not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. But here it's more emotional and dramatic. He's revealing how people will respond when they expect to be let into the heavens, only to find that they're actually on their way to hell. And he says, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So visceral responses, existential weight and dread and anxiety over the impending anguish and torment facing you when you thought you were going to be let right in. Number 8, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. John 3:17. Speaking to Nicodemus, emphasizing God's desire for salvation rather than condemnation. So Jesus comes along saying things like sin no more, and he says this later while he's being crucified, but things like Father forgive them for they do not know. Jesus appears to be above, he is, but above humanity. So it can seem like through his judgment and through his perspective, which is looking down on humanity, that he is condemning us, that he is the messenger to let us all know of our shortcomings and wrongdoings to God. But that's not what Jesus says he's here to do. He says, but that the world might be saved through him. So Jesus comes as an offering of salvation, an offering of grace and mercy. I imagine this is why the Gospels are called the Gospels, which means good news. The good news that Jesus is trying to depict is that there's a God out there that wants your salvation. There's a God out there that's offering you grace and mercy, which on one hand is very good news because Jesus is offering spiritual sustenance with the promise that you will not grow hungry. On the other hand, this is probably the most pushback that I see from people when it comes to Jesus and the Bible. They are repulsed by the idea that they're already guilty. They are disgusted by the fact that they need to be given grace and mercy. They characterize this God as a human being with an ego. And then they begin seeing God as a tyrant, someone who's manipulative, someone who's desperate, someone who needs your salvation. So then people, stick their chin up and look away. They're too proud to think that they could possibly owe God even a fraction of themselves. That's their decision. And it's true, it is their decision. They have free will. You don't have to follow God. You don't have to bow your head to God. It's said that all knees will bow to Jesus. But if you don't believe that and you live your whole life and Jesus still hasn't returned, as far as you can tell, you're just living your life. I think it's important to illustrate that God doesn't have to give you grace. God doesn't have to offer you mercy. But if you want to align with Jesus and God, you begin to accept and wrestle with the idea that even though you might not like it, Jesus could have very well been speaking the truth anyway. And this emphasizes the day of judgment. Because if you look towards the character of God and the commands of Jesus with stubborn refusal and forced indifference, he's saying that this day of judgment is not going anywhere. Just because you hate the ideas of heaven and hell, just because you are disturbed by the idea of bowing to Jesus and accepting your broken, sinful nature, it doesn't change the separation of sheep and goats. You are either going to be put over here or over there, based on your intentions, based on your deeds, and based on your response to Jesus. I think the biggest idea that I'm trying to get across is Jesus didn't reveal himself as God in flesh so that way you would like him. He's not a politician. He wasn't someone looking for a position of power, because he already had it. He came as the way, the truth, and the life, and he died on a cross for it, and for you. Do you think he liked that? You think Jesus was giddy and laughing and excitable about being crucified? Is that what you think? You think he wanted to go through that? Not through his will, but through his Father's. He was following the Father's command. And some people seem to think that Jesus is an easy person to follow. And I mean that in the context of, since he offers salvation, and since you think that you can bank on eternity, which he is offering, that it somehow makes it easy. And I guess they seem to forget the horrible, painful death of Jesus for living out what he was sent here to do, and what that means for an actual follower of Christ that is reborn again. 9, keep watch, therefore, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Matthew 24:42, teaching disciples about vigilance and readiness for the coming of the Son of Man. This is similar to the other quote, talking about Noah and no one being ready and the flood coming out of nowhere. Jesus' second coming is going to act as that. It's going to catch people off guard, and a day of judgment is going to hit everybody, and no one's going to be prepared for it other than the actual followers of Christ. And 10, by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Matthew 12:37, immediately following the teaching on idle words, emphasizing that speech reveals inner truth and accountability. So by your words is really important. Language is very important because language acts as a filter as your emotional state mixed with your intentions, mixed with your character, mixed with your environment, mixed with context, mixed with your relationships. Your words are a synthesis of multiple aspects of you. And ultimately, there's a lot of will attached to that. Your free will is attached to your word and what you can say and what you won't say and what you'll do before you say certain things. Like with this account, I'm trying to do a lot of research. I'm trying to get to the bottom of things and get to the truth of things. And if that includes me being wrong, which it was, I thought Joseph, Jacob's son, was an older brother. I thought he was an older brother. He was the 11th of 12 children. So, I looked that up and I was like, yeah, all right, fair enough. I didn't know that. I was off. But yeah, by your words. Your words are important. You can break people down with your words, or you can build people up with your words. You can tell people the truth, or you can lie. You can compliment someone, or you can insult them. So yeah, the day of judgment, in the words of Jesus, the day of judgment is inevitable. You're either going to face a day of judgment through God on earth, which is what the flood was, and Jesus acted as a day of judgment for the Pharisees and for the broken people. And apparently when Jesus comes back a second time, he's going to be just like the flood. He's going to act as a day of revelation and a day of judgment. And if you don't reach it here on earth, it will be as soon as you die. Like, what's the quote? All who are in tombs will hear his voice and come out. So there's no hiding. Once you die, the jig is up. There's no more flesh in the way. Your entire intentions, your deeds, your character will be in the light and judged, and you will either be a sheep or a goat. Thank you.